My name is Daria. Welcome to Scrum Master's video series where I give you practical tips on how to build awesome teams. Now, this is part 2 of Agile metrics for Scrum Masters. If you haven't seen the previous video where I talked about delivering a done increment and metrics associated with that, go watch it first. I'm going to link it in the description. And then come back to the second part where we'll continue on this topic. So in this video, we will be talking about establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. So this is one of the accountabilities of the Scrum Master. How can we actually measure whether the Scrum Master is successful? Well, let's look at some of the metrics that can help us. Scrum is being followed with all elements, rules, values, and principles. You represent Scrum for your team and your organization. You are not really there to be a Scrum police and just force the framework on people without really understanding why they're doing that, but you're there to help them really understand the reasons behind different elements of Scrum, but also follow the framework mindfully with really good understanding of why we're doing that and what are the benefits we're getting out of it. There are some metrics that you can implement to help you with that. Most of them are qualitative, but can be turned into quantitative metrics with some creativity. Are all elements, roles, events, and other rules followed by your teams? Now, every single element of Scrum is important, and your team needs to follow those elements really to get all of the benefits of Scrum. And this is something that you can really measure and calculate and see to help you understand whether you're being successful with helping to establish Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. So here's what the Scrum Guide actually has to say about that. Each element of the framework serves a specific purpose that is essential to the overall value and results realized with Scrum. Changing the core design or ideas of Scrum, leaving out elements, or not following the rules of Scrum covers up problems and limits the benefits of Scrum, potentially even rendering it useless. If not all elements are present, you obviously have some work to do, and you can easily see whether you are actually achieving that metric. So in a way, it's almost quantitative because you can quantify how many rules, how many events or roles are there, and see whether each one of them kind of has a checkbox next to it. What is the overall level of understanding of the Scrum framework, agility, and empiricism? So your team might be actually following all of the elements, rules, and events, and have all of the roles in the Scrum framework, and so you kind of pass on the previous metric, but they might be just going through the motions, not really understanding why they're doing certain things or why they're there, what their importance is in the framework. So in this case, we usually call it mechanical Scrum or zombie Scrum. So if this is the case, then obviously you're not really yet achieving the purpose and the purpose of the role of establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. It's not just about following the framework blindly. The quality of your Scrum, practically what we can define it as, also matters. And for me to really help define whether the quality of your Scrum is there, is to define how well your team and your organization understands the key principles and key core concepts around that. Now, obviously, some of the things that you can do to help you define whether everybody understands those principles, it can be related to, for example, self-assessments done by the team using a survey, or your observation and just kind of asking questions, looking at how people work and why they do certain things, but also doing interviews and one-on-ones to figure out whether there is this level of understanding of the Scrum framework, agility, and empiricism. Here are some of the points that you can actually decide to evaluate when trying to see whether there is this level of understanding. Complexity of product development, practical application of Agile values and principles, the purpose of each Scrum element, such as events, roles, commitments, artifacts, empirical process control theory, importance and connection between transparency, inspection, and adaptation, practical application of Scrum values in the work of the team, self-management, and cross-functionality. Here are some of the points that you might want to evaluate. What is the level of understanding of those elements by your team and your organization? Do they understand how they're connected and how they actually are related to what they do while following Scrum framework? That can be very helpful for you. And it is up to you to decide how you want to actually evaluate those. It can be a self-assessment survey that you create and ask team members to fill in. It can be your personal observations of how the team members or the organization speaks about Scrum and Agile, as well as just observing their interactions. And it can be just interviewing people one-on-one. So it's up to you to decide how you want to really collect those metrics, whether you want to keep them as qualitative or you want to transform them in a way into something that can be quantified. In my previous video, I've already mentioned my online course, Success with Agile and Scrum. And in the course, I provide you with a lot of exercises and worksheets that can actually help you identify some of those elements that can be then easily transformed into metrics, right? So we look at all of the Agile values, principles, as well as Scrum elements through many different exercises that can help you identify some of those potential metrics and identify where you really need to focus on to be more successful as a Scrum Master and to help your organization to really succeed with Agile. As always, I hope you learned something new today, and if you did, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. As well as for more insights and other resources for Scrum Masters, head down to scrummaster.com. We have a blog, we have a forum, and many free downloads that you can get advantage of once you subscribe to the newsletter. So I hope to see you in the next video, part 3 of Agile Metrics for Scrum Masters. Cheers and Scrum on!